Okay, Fergus, thanks. That's me, I think, first. Is that okay, Michelle? I really want to thank you for this. I suppose as a former councillor myself as well, I understand the challenges there are around, even in terms of time and labour in putting together the documents and doing the work that you have done. And I really think it's the way forward. And it's one of the most practical documents that I have seen for a long time. What really speaks to me, I suppose, is when you say, we ask what could be achieved if the area received comparable level of investment to other similar regions. And coming from Mayo, you can understand why that statement would really resonate with myself. So you have all of the answers there. I want to hone in on a couple of things, and I suppose because of my own portfolio being higher education, I'm very excited about the opportunities of the Technological University linking up the GMIT, Sligo, Donegal, and then onto Derry. And I'm glad that you have a meeting coming up there as well. There are a couple of things I think within it around the deeper cooperation between the two third level education systems on the island that we really need to hone in on. We need to increase, as you said, the cross-border cooperation in the third level education sector, and that's been included in multiple government programmes across the board in the South in 2007, 2009 and 2020. And the new Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science has included it as well in the Statement of Strategy 2021 to 2023 in the goal of advancing the North-South cooperation. But there still is very limited integration and cooperation. And taking just the area of cooperation and cross-border student enrolment, the most recent figures which are available are for the 2019-2020 academic year, and that shows that 1,588 students from the north attended higher education institutions in the south, and 2,090 students from the south attended higher education institutions in the north. And that speaks for itself, because overall the student mobility has declined in the last 10 years by 18%, and students from the north make up less than 1% of students in the south in terms of enrolments. Now, so that tells us that all of the good work that we're doing, we're not hitting where it needs to hit. And I suppose my question for yourselves, now just aside as well, myself and John O'Dowd, my counterpart in the north, are doing a specific piece of research around what the barriers are there. And we know that some of them are in terms of UCAS and the CEO application systems, extending SUSI to the north, and several other things there that are being thrown up for us. And we have to really tackle this once and for all. So my question around that part of it is, do you think that further education colleges have the capacity and the independence to reach out to develop sustainable structures to support cross-border education and training? Because I have concerns there. While the universities seem to be on a better level, even notwithstanding the kind of the low figures, the further education, which is, if you've agreed, is hugely important. I think, I'm not sure if the structures there have the capacity to deliver what we need to deliver in terms of cross-border education. I also note in that where you particularly say that there are particular challenges around traveller education and Protestant boys. And I might just ask you to speak to that as well, if you don't mind. Now, I need to ask you as well around the Western Rail Corridor and the connectivity along the Wild Atlantic Way and the economic corridor along the west, because somebody mentioned here before around the connectivity between Dublin and Belfast. And obviously on the west, our concern is that the huge potential along the western seaboard, going right up to the north and around and going down even in terms of the Western Rail Corridor and the arc there from Rosslare connecting Waterford, Cork, and continue on to Limerick and Foynes and right about. There's enormous potential there as well, both in terms of tourism development, but also in terms of freight, and how you might see that in fitting in with the work that you're doing. I have to ask you around the practical impacts for yourselves around the protocol, Brexit and protocol in particular. I'm just interested in your views in that. If we have time, somebody might address in terms of what can we do to mitigate the trade agreement, the Australian trade agreement. I have particular concerns around that in terms of the agri development and the impact that will have on the agri sector in the north. And just maybe just in terms of your own unionist engagement as a group, what you have done there, what your plans are in the future to ensure that everybody's voice is heard. I have an awful lot of other questions, but I'm not going to put them. I just have to say to Shane Campbell, I really hear what he says as well, because he used to work on the LEADER programme, and the importance of us doing something very tangible now in terms of the exchange of learning and I don't like to call them transnational projects, but the cross-border projects that can be done in terms of LEADER and Peace Plus. But thinking beyond that, again, I think that's an imperative piece of work that needs to be done in how we develop that into the future, and what we need to be doing in terms of TDs to work with yourselves to do it. So thank you. I know that's a lot of questions, but you might divide out to give me a few answers. Thanks.
Over to your chair there, Eamon.
Yes. Shane, do you want to come in there?
Well, I'll come in and answer one point if you want, Eamon.
That's fine, David. Come on ahead. I didn't see your hand. Yeah, David.
Senator Walsh, I'll come in as a border unionist councillor, and I'll answer your question on the connection with the unionists in the north. ICBAN has a representation from all parties and none. So the DUP represented, the Ulster Unionists, everybody. And we operate, in all my years on ICBAN, we've never had a falling out. All decisions are arrived by consensus. We might have our disagreements, but we arrive at a consensus opinion. The chair and the vice chair, everybody gets, whether the unionist parties have to get the chance to chair, the nationalist parties, it has to be a north-south split. So Eamon's the chair this year. I'm the vice chair from the south of Fine Gael. So last year it was Fianna Fáil and I think Sinn Féin were the chair. So it's continuously given out on an all-party basis. So everyone is inclusive. And this is what I like about the ICBAN model. We are all working together, and at the minute we have representation from all parties and we're talking monthly, and we're working together, and that needs to continue, especially the way the thing is going. But it works well, and there's no one or two parties hog it all. It's evenly split among both traditions and all parties.
That's
Thank
really
you.
Yeah, thanks. Maybe, Councillor Maxwell, you might just speak to the bit on the Protestant boys that you referred to in the education section of the challenges in engaging. You're on mute.
David?
Yeah,
We can't hear.
He's just on mute. Losing you there, David.
sorry. It's yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah, I can't remember referring to that. Did I refer to that?
No, it's in this section of your report in the human capital part. It's a travelling community and working class boys and males in general are underrepresented in third level. And I just wondered what needed to be done.
Well, Shane, maybe you'd like to answer that one.
Well, just before you come in there, Shane, if you we're going ahead then, and then we're going to call Councillor Paul Robinson in. He's one of our delegates.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that has been identified in our research in terms of looking at those population cohorts that are underrepresented. It's a newly developed strategy, Deputy, so there are certain areas that are in there that we yet have to progress and develop. In the last 6 months, I would imagine that when we look back on it, our emphasis has been more around the natural infrastructure and looking at opportunities around that with quite a small team of resource. In the next number of months, we'll be turning more to the economic development and the education and training areas. That question around the opportunities and the abilities of the FE and the HE sectors to support the needs of industry and to drive forward the economy is something we'll be discussing with the member councils. We meet on a regular basis with directors of the councils who, together with the board, drive the programme of work and set the strategies and the priorities. That'll be one of the areas that we will want to turn to that hasn't had, if you like, due attention just yet. So it'll not be just at that higher education side, but it will also be looking at those cohorts of the population that haven't had the same opportunities. We do make applications regularly to the Reconciliation Fund. And the Reconciliation Fund at Department of Foreign Affairs is always mindful in terms of its strategy to target marginalised groups. Those would be groups that we would want to try and look at how we could best engage with them in future. And we see the challenge of being able to engage with them, but want to engage with them when we're even completing our Brexit research and marginalised and migrants as well.
Has David got the floor?
Those will be, that will become a focus of our programme of work. So I cannot just yet answer you to say exactly what we're going to be doing, but it will be a focus for future, yes.
Thank you, Shane. I've asked for Paul to speak and then followed by Andy. If that's okay, Paul, can you come in? And then followed Andy and then by Dardy.
Okay.
So Paul, can
go ahead.
Right, Paul, just unmute yourself.
Thank you very much for the thing today. Just like to thank to support what David was saying there about the unionists on the border. I'm a unionist on the border side too. I represent Rosslea in that area east from Anna, and we get on very well in Nickban. It's a very organised
Paul, we can hear you, but we can't
Everybody
see
has
you.
their say.
Paul, I'm sorry to interrupt you. If you can hear me, we can't see you at the moment. So if you turn your camera off and on, hopefully, and we'll keep your time that you have there. If you just
see me now?
Not yet. If you just tried once more. Yeah, we can see you now. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, just like to support what David was saying there earlier on about the unionists on in the border area. We are sort of a minority getting in the area, and we are where the group works very well together. Everybody gets their say, and everybody gets a chance to share the meeting. I shared Lakeban a couple of years ago. I was chair of it as well, and really enjoyed it. And I think I was the first one we brought it down to meet you in February 2019, and it worked very well. I just wanted to say that and support David what he has already said. I'm not going to repeat what he has already said. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And Andy, and then followed by Gary. All right, Andy?
Yeah, thank you, Eamon. Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick soundbite, just to come in on the back of what Shane was describing there. I think in 2018, we had a project that was funded by the Reconciliation Fund, and we brought young people together from both traditions and both sides of the border to look at Brexit. And it was a difficult sell because the young people were not into Brexit in any shape or form. But we used the vehicle of storytelling to try and elicit some of their thoughts and opinions about Brexit. And it was just to say that we ended up with having a residential in County Donegal, and we brought with us a group of young people from a very deprived part of Omagh Town, from the unionist tradition there. And many of those young people said to us during the residential they'd never actually travelled across the border before and had never thought of doing so. So it is one example which is a kind of microcosm, but it's something which can surely be built on through the opportunities of Peace Plus, etc.
Thank you, Andy. Gary, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just to briefly mention, Deputy Conway-Walsh mentioned about the cross-border education and collaboration, and just to briefly mention the cross-border further education and higher education cluster between Donegal ETB, LYIT, and the University of Ulster and the Northwest Regional College, which has been ongoing for the last year or two, and that work was supported by both Donegal County Council and Derry City Strabane Council. And I think it's an excellent example of what can be achieved with the collaboration of further and higher education bodies on both sides of the border. And I think that development of shared services that's happening in the Northwest can be an example, I think, to other regions. And I think maybe it's something that we and ICBAN could explore in the coming years.